We're visiting with Marion County's only female attorney. You'll meet her coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Marion County Medical Center. We're focused on activities in Marion and thinking through the lives of an amazing Marion resident. We're visiting with an attorney, Pat Speth. Born in Marion, grew up in Marion, went to school and returned to Marion in January 1985 to help her father in his law practice, and has been practicing law in Marion County since 1985. Good morning, Pat.
Morning, Greg.
Thanks
How
so
you
much
doing?
for being with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Incredible opportunity to think of all that's gone into being here, obviously being in this amazing medical center. To think this has a dramatic tie to your family. Had a lot to do, actually, at some level with bringing you all here. A Duke alum who was here practicing medicine here in Marion County, even though it was before this location. To think about so much that's happened, how Marion County's grown and how the Speths have grown with it.
Yes.
This is truly a treat.
Well, thank you.
Let's talk real quick about growing up in Marion County. What was that like, Pat?
Well, it's different than it is now in much ways. It was a much smaller town, if you can imagine it, even then. Smaller, more rural than it is now. We've got an industry grown up in here, even though we're not at the best economic right now. But it was definitely a small town existence. At times, I didn't like that, particularly as I got to be a teenager.
Right.
But I have a lot of fond memories. You have the parades and the birthday parties and just walking from downtown to your home and playing with your children, you know, other children on the neighborhood. Right. Basically, my neighborhood is the same families that I grew up with from when I was born to, they're still there. The parents and the children come back with their children. All my neighbors are basically the same ones that were in that neighborhood when I was born.
So a lot of friends grew up, stayed here in Marion, left, and came back.
Yes, many of them have done that too.
This is a common trend. What is it about Marion County that does that?
Well, for me, you know, I went off and I've been up and down the East Coast and to other cities, including New York City and smaller southern cities like Columbia and Raleigh-Durham. But I think once you get out, like I said, I wanted to escape kind of the small town life, and you go and see what it's like, but you appreciate what there is here. You appreciate that you can walk down the street and know basically everybody there and say hi to them. You appreciate in my business that not only are my clients business clients, but they're personal friends of mine. I go to church with them. I know their families. I know their children knew my stepchildren. Wow. That's what you appreciate. You appreciate people caring. You know, if something happens to your family, if something happens to me in this town, I know there's someone there that can help me.
Right. Wow. Wow. Pat, did you have brothers and sisters growing up here?
I have one older brother, and he was not born in Marion like I was, but they moved here when he was about 3 years old, so he was raised here also. He's 5 years older than me. He's also an attorney, and he practices in Columbia.
You'd think law was in the blood, obviously coming back now. Did he ever practice with your dad?
No, he never practiced with my father at all. He's basically in labor law, not a small town law, more of a bigger time of practice. He worked in Greenville with a firm, and now he's with that same firm as a senior partner in their firm in Columbia.
And but y'all have been practicing about the same length of time, Pat.
He's probably been about 3 or 4 years. He was getting out about the time I was starting law school. So he's been out about 3 or 4 years ahead of me.
Did you ever find instances, even though he's practicing labor law, that you'll call your big brother and seek some guidance, or vice versa?
We do, particularly for our areas. When he was buying a house, he called my parents, my father, and me to help him with some problems they found in their title work, getting their mortgage at the last minute, and needed some help quickly. Oh, yeah. And we got that from him, and I call him when I have some local clients that have some immigration issues and things, which that's the main concern I have now. Sometimes I call him because he has an immigration lawyer and he can help that. Or when my parents died and I went to insurance companies, he knew somebody in the state insurance that could help. So he has a lot of contacts in Columbia that way. So if I need something that's more statewide or bigger than what our local area is, I call him.
You mentioned your parents had passed away. Two names that very well known throughout Marion County, I'm sure, and really throughout this region, Charlie and Betty Speth. As we think through, obviously my first contact with you came in and really coming in contact with your dad, and you had a dramatic impact. Your father was instrumental, as you know, helping us you helped get the company set up, and then your dad helping us lock up the piece of land that we bought and built a tower
Right.
between Mullins and Nichols.
Yeah,
So-
he was very excited with that. He enjoyed that. That was getting his big time experience, I think, when you came to town. He was sort of semi-retired at that point, but really enjoyed seeing how the communication industry came and using his expertise in real estate to help you acquire the property, and his contacts locally with Mr. Galt Beeson that helped you
Absolutely.
greatly, who is the county administrator, and I don't think could have even done it without him and his relationship with the people in the county.
Absolutely, and finally with Oscar McKenzie, who
Right.
Galt, your dad to Galt and Galt to Oscar, who enabled us to
Who
pick up
actually
that.
was the one you purchased the land from.
Exactly. It's amazing to think that through. Now, what brought your parents to Marion, Pat?
Well, my father is actually one of those Yankees from Reading, Pennsylvania, and he came down to Duke as an undergrad and then went into World War II and then came back to Duke in law school. Mm-hmm. My mother was originally from the Low Country near Waldoboro, South Carolina, a little, really small town outside of Waldoboro, and she ended up at Duke after going to Coker College, and she was there in nursing school and met my father while she was actually finished nursing school and working in the hospital, Duke Medical Center, and he was in law school. And then my father, after they'd been out for a few years, they kept wanting to come back to a small town, and my father had always decided he loved the South and wanted to stay there. My mother wanted to come back to South Carolina where her roots were. And another local attorney, Mr. Malcolm Woods, who was another fine family here, and his son is an attorney also, Bryce Woods. Mr. Woods was a graduate from Duke Law School and apparently had contacted the school saying it was a small town and they needed some new attorneys in town. And so my father and mother came and looked at the town, and I think they met some other people such as Dr. Berry, who was a doctor here, was also a Duke grad. My mother's sister was working in Florence at the time, and they decided they really liked the town and moved here, and that was in about the mid-50s, and they stayed here ever since.
That's amazing, Pat. Were there many other Duke graduates in Marion? I mean, you talked about Dr. Berry and obviously Malcolm Woods. Was this had it just been a conclave of some Duke folks?
Other than them, I really don't know anymore locally. There was another doctor down at Myrtle Beach that was close to my parents, and we used to rent a house at Myrtle's Inlet from them and did things with their family. And there were probably a few other people like that, but when I was growing up, I really don't know of any. We had several ministers that came through that had been at the Divinity School that worked with the Methodist Church. You know how they moved them in and out, but there were several of them that had been at Duke in the Divinity School. But I said even when I went to Duke, because I went there as an undergrad, also, it was amazing to me just to meet 2 or 3 people from South Carolina at Duke at that time. It was just that unusual.
Sure. So. Pat, when your folks arrived in Marion, did your dad focus on a particular type of law? Did he have a specialty?
When he first came back, I think that's like everybody in Marion they were general practitioners. You did everything. You didn't have a choice, really. You did it all. And so he, of course, did that. He even worked on Saturdays because they opened their office on Saturdays. Then on Christmas Eve, he'd tell me tales about that, and I complained and wanted to get off. But I think his specialty still ended up being maybe the real estate and corporate, and that's what he ended up in. He never really did much criminal law, insurance law, never liked family law. He wasn't really into those areas.
Was your mom working when they moved here?
When they moved here, I think that was one of the reasons also, because she was a nurse, and she came into the Marion Memorial Hospital. And she was head nurse there for several years. She also served at one time as an administrator, I think as an acting administrator. Like I said, she had contact in with Dr. Berry there. And so she worked there until I was born.
Is that right? Took a little break?
Yeah, she took a break when I was born. My brother was 5, and I was just being born. So I think between the 2 children, she decided she'd stay at home.
Yeah.
And she stayed at home until I was about in 6th grade.
And then went back to work.
Well, yeah, she was approached. That's when they were opening the Marion County Vocational Center, which I think is now the Marion County Technical Education Center. They changed the names periodically as it rose. But at that time, I think it was Marion Mullins Vocational Center, and they were first opening it. And also, licensed practical nursing was becoming a brand new program throughout the United States, and definitely in South Carolina. And she became the coordinator and started it at Vocational Center.
And this would have been in the 70s or
mid to late 60s.
Mid to late 60s. Not to date you there.
Right.
Excuse me, Pat.
Yeah, well. Right. But she did that, and she started that program, and she also even went to Chicago and wrote the boards one year, the national boards for the LPN.
Wow.
So she was very respected in that, and she taught in that program not only LPNs, but that she also taught the emergency technicians in the county. They had a nurse's aide at that time because they were nurse's aide. She taught them. She taught adult classes and high school classes, where they started as a senior in the high school in the LPN program. And she did that until the early 80s when she was finally allowed to retire. She tried to retire for about 3 or 4 years, but they kept saying they couldn't find anyone to replace her.
I'm sure that would be tough for your mom to get out of it. That's right. I'm sure that would be tough, as it was for your dad. But that's, I guess, really what, when you came back to Marion in early 1985.
Right.
And his goal was to get you into the practice. I guess his goal was probably different than what you thought.
His goal was to get me working somewhere at the time, I think, when I got out of law school.
Right. Wow.
And I think he always wanted to see one of his children in practice with him. And so he was very proud to have me back here. But the move was actually temporary. When I came back, I was sort of going to get some experience under the belt, learn firsthand from some things, and then probably go somewhere like Columbia or Charlotte or move on. But again, once I got back here, I guess it's like we grow up, and though I wanted to get out of the small town, once I came back, I really appreciated more what I had, and I got used to being kind of my own boss. You're able to buy a house here, have nice living, basically, arrangement, and I was still able to visit a lot of friends in the other towns and communities. And I even went to New York once and visited a friend there from Duke Law School, where I went, and he was like, about his second year with one of the firms, a smaller firm, but one on down on Wall Street. And he was talking to me, and I talked about my business. He talked about what he was doing, and he looked at me one time and said, "You're actually talking to clients?"
Oh,
and
no.
I said, "Well, if I don't talk to the client, nobody will, because my father's semi-retired, and he leaves for the beach on Wednesday." And he was just amazed that I was already talking to clients. And I had another friend in Atlanta, and she was so worried about billable hours and what pressure she was being put under. And I just realized how good a position I had here, because I could sort of set my own hours. Yes, we have to worry about paying the bills, but you're not so much having to fill in a form. And yes, I enjoy talking to clients. I don't feel pressured that I have to spend 10 minutes doing business. I can ask them how their day, how their family is, what's happening in their life, and that's part of what I enjoy about it.
Ties in exactly how we opened this interview up. And obviously we jumped into your practice with your dad. You left you finished up high school in Raleigh, then went to Duke, and finished at Duke. What did you study at Duke?
I was an English and history major with a strong emphasis in theater, because that's what I was interested in at the time, was British history and literature with a focus on theater.
What had originally gotten you interested in theater, Pat?
Well, growing up, I had seen several professional shows kind of in Charlotte, and then about that time was when the Florence Little Theater started. In fact, I even remember my mother taking me to a birthday party, I think it was my cousin's, at the original Little Florence Little Theater, which was out near the airport.
Right.
And it was a little warehouse out in the airport, and we saw Cinderella or something, I think, a children's show, and just loved it. And then they started taking me about teenage years when it moved out where it is now, which is Cashwell, whatever the road is now.
Cashwell.
And they moved out there, and they started taking me, and we had season tickets to it, and so they took me to all the shows there, and I just really craved and loved the theater. And we didn't have anything. You didn't even have it in schools here in Marion, and I wasn't driving, so I couldn't go work theater there.
Now, were you in front of the audience or behind the scenes, or what was your interest?
Now, once I got involved, which was at high school in Raleigh, where I went to St. Mary's in Raleigh for my last years of high school, I worked basically stagecraft, scene design, and stage management was my main area at that time. Was stage management.
Okay.
Right.
Did you say you later went off to graduate school?
Yes, I did after Duke go to graduate school, and I ended up at South Carolina in the theater graduate program there, and then did an internship for a year in New York with a theater company, doing theater management in the office and then touring as an assistant stage manager.
Wow, Pat. So this was really in your blood. Did you ever think that you were going to make that a career?
Well, that's what I was aiming for, till I went to New York.
So you were up there.
Yes. Realized New York, starving theater life wasn't for me.
Right.
But a lot of it was, and a lot of people had tried to tell me that with my brother and father being attorneys and all. They kept trying to say, you're going to want more. That's not what you're really going to want to do. And I kind of realized that I had to go on to either business management or law and get into something a little bit more advanced, a little bit more academic for me to be fulfilled. And I'm not an accounting person, and I'm not a bookkeeping person, so an MBA didn't look too enticing. So I ended up going to law school.
Wow. Well, that's a good cancellation of choices to get down to something where you ended up coming back to help your dad in that regard. That's it. So you came back after you left New York, came back or began to prepare for the LSATs or otherwise to get into law school, got into law school, and virtually after law school came right on back.
Right, more or less I came back to Marion and started practicing with my father. Like I said, it was a temporary move, but once here, About 3 years into it, when my father decided he basically would be semi-retired, he had gotten a place at Merle's Inlet, and so that's when he changed the business into my name, and he went of counsel and sort of turned things somewhat over to me, as much as someone who's been here for, since mid-50s that long and has a daughter and a child working on him can turn it over to you. You know how that is with your father being in your business, some with you.
Absolutely.
It doesn't totally get turned over to you.
No, never, never. And I'm sure it never did with Charlie. He was loving your office. In your office, Pat, for viewers who may not have had an opportunity to spend time with you in a legal sense, your office is right off of Main Street.
Yes, it is. It's right from the courthouse, too, about a block, right across the street from the courthouse and the PD Federal Bank building, right off the square.
Oh, is it Dozier?
Dozier Street.
Dozier
right.
Street.
And he built that about mid-60s, too, is when he built that office, and he's been there ever since.
It's a great location. It kind of stands off from itself.
Right. Well, we've got, since then, in the past few years, we've got 2 other attorneys that moved onto the street. So we've got 3 attorneys right there within each other.
Is that right?
So it makes it real convenient.
Of course, in the mid-'60s, when he set that up, to think about the attitude of, I'm going to be a solo practitioner. At the same time, I'm going to be right on the pulse of everything, right across from the courthouse, close at hand for everything. So that mentality of being a solo practitioner and being able to reach out to the community, but at the same time being right there on the heart of everything, that really turned out well.
Well, in Marion, that's the advantage. I think most all the attorneys have our offices right there, where we're within walking distance of the records building and the courthouse and everything, and the bank. Most of us do a lot of bank work, real estate, mortgages and types, so we're in all those, and it's convenient. And I think that's the advantage, because it's not like down where you live at the beach. There are attorneys in Myrtle Beach, but they got to come all the way back to Conway to the courthouse and court system, so it delays things sometimes. And we need something or paper filed, as you know, in closings. We just run across the street and get it done in a few minutes.
That would help dramatically. Yes, you just walk across the street. That's an advantage of
small town, being a small town attorney.
Absolutely, and also saves on gas and everything. As gas prices are through the roof, you literally walk across the street. That's amazing. Pat, what's your specialty? What do you focus on primarily?
I did the same thing my father did. I'm real estate, some corporate. I now do a lot of probate also, estate work, not so much estate planning and that type of thing, because that's sort of specially trusted estates, but actually probating the wills and the estates after someone passes away and doing some simple wills. I have been involved in family court more in the past than now, but I am currently getting back into that. I'm now just started working as the attorney for the Volunteer Guardian Ad Litem program and DSS cases. And so I'm going to be representing them for the county.
In a small community, Pat, I know you pointed that out as a real plus, the ability to both serve them on a attorney-client relationship as well as be able to be with them as a community, in a small community, be with them throughout the community. Does that have some difficulty at some level, being a small community?
I mean, everybody knows what you're doing. Right. They definitely know where you are and what are you doing. But I see more advantages than disadvantages.
Right.
When I first came back, the law profession here has even changed. We've become more casual and I think more open. When I came back, there had only been one female attorney even in this county, and she had only been practicing for 3 years, and that's Mary Buchan, who's now the family court judge. And I actually worked with her a little bit doing family court, because that's predominantly what she did. So it was always kind of, I think, hard for a woman to come in at that time. And now, since then, we've had several women come in and practice, even though they haven't really stayed. And right now, currently, I'm the only female attorney in the county.
Come on. Is that right, huh?
Yes.
How many attorneys are in the Marion County
Well, we're down
bar?
to only about 12 or 13 now, because we've had a lot of our senior attorneys pass away, the same as my father 4 years ago. In the last 4 years, we've lost several. So where everybody, except for basically my father, had 2 people in a firm, an older senior partner and a younger partner, they're now all solo. It's all solo firms now.
That is
amazing. Things do change, around, and I think there is a problem. Not that I'm looking to have someone in my office, but other attorneys, it's hard to get young attorneys to come to the town, and economically, when they're paying off loans and type things, they need to go to bigger cities first, so it's hard to get them here.
Well, how do you think Malcolm Woods or the other folks were able to convince your dad? I know your mom, having grown up near Walterboro and having attended Coker and wanted to get back to South Carolina, but how do you think they convinced him that Marion was the place to go?
Well, I think a lot of it is my father wanted a small town. That's what he was looking for, and I think that is what, if somebody's looking for that small town, particularly if he already had a young son, family, they're wanting somewhere to raise that family in that type community, and I think that's the draw for people like that. If somebody's single, they're really not looking to come to a small town as much, so I think it's highly convenient next to the beach in Columbia. It's not far to go, and you get a lot of both worlds' advantages is what I like. But I think that's the problem. And now I think the problem is I graduated in '84 in law school and '78 in college, and I just get amazed when I do interviews, because I interview for alumni undergrad. And I'm amazed at tuition and how people can afford it. And I think that's the problem. When you come out with those loans, I was very thankful to my parents. They basically paid for most of all my education, so I didn't face that. But you come out with big loans on you, you got to go somewhere to pay it. And to be honest, you don't make the income in a small town. Cost of living's less, but you still aren't making a lot what you need to pay off those loans and type loans.
That is tough to think about. That truly is.
So I don't know today if my father was facing and he had loans to pay, whether he could have come to Marion.
That's a good point. But I'm so amazed just thinking about you arriving here in '85 and being only the second female attorney in the county to marry Buchan, and now being in a position where you're the only female attorney. How that's been probably a big transition. Were there other women over the last 15 years who came and went?
A few, not many.
Just a
Only
handful.
a few, just one or two.
I saw
And most of them, to be honest, were also connected. Everybody's connected with the county that's been here. Mary Buchan's family was here. You know, the ones that have been connected have family in the county, so it's not like someone totally coming out without some connection.
I know you're involved, Pat, in a lot of professional associations and committees. How have you been? Can we just focus on a couple of those? As I was thinking about, there's so many things you're involved in, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, for viewers who may not be familiar with the American Bar Association, which is, maybe you could explain real quick what that is, and then the solo and small firm section of the American Bar Association, which you've been active, as well as the South Carolina Bar Association. What exactly is the American Bar Association?
Well, the American Bar Association, excuse me, American Bar Association is basically a national association of attorneys that get together, have seminars, have annual and semi-annual meetings, have a political group that gets together to promote trying to maintain the integrity of the legal profession, address problems that might be arising, and also deal with legislation that might be coming up affecting laws throughout the United States, trying to get them more uniform so each state is more uniform in the practice, and you're not going so much from one totally different world to another when you cross the state line. And I've been going to ABA, actually started the first year I met you, back in New York when I first came here in '85, because it was in New York City. And actually I taught my father into that one to let me go just because it was in New York City for the trip to New York. But I did go to a few things there and went to the president's reception with your parents and you, who I've known since law school, and enjoyed that. And then I've been off and on to a few over the years, and this past year I went to the one in D.C., and that's probably the one I got the most involved in with the solo and small firm. Before I'd been in family law. They got different sessions for the different areas of law you are, and I'd been in family law and some of the other areas. And this time I did the solo and small firm, which they had just started doing a whole day just focused on the solo and small firms from across the United States. And I found that interesting to connect with them, and they invited me to some of their committee meetings, because even though I'm from a small firm solo, I'm still from a very small town, which is unusual even comparing with most of those that are going to those ABA meetings. But it's nice to see we all still have a lot of the same issues, the same problems in our practice.
You're all early on dealing with clients face to
Right.
face.
And we're all fighting the same cost of trying to keep computers and keep up with technology, and yet keep the overhead down in your office and learn how to do it and get trained on it and be able to put it in your office and have the time to do it.
Golly.
Because most multi-firms, they have someone just assigned to doing that, and we have to do all that and bookkeeping, and most of us I have one assistant, and that's it, my one associate assistant secretary, and some people have maybe a paralegal on top of that or a couple more, but usually you're down to 1 to 3 support staff.
Absolutely, and I've enjoyed talking to Alicia in your office. She's been wonderful. How about being the chairman or the chairperson of the City of Marion Planning and Zoning Commission? Did I get that right?
Yes, the Zoning and Planning Commission. I'm the chair of it. I sort of inherited that position from my father. He had been there since it was started, actually, because he got on it when they actually created the zoning ordinance for Marion. There had not been one for the City of Marion, and he was instrumental with the original members of that committee to do that, and spent years and years on it. And when he passed away, the City Council, I was asked to serve. I said I would, and they voted and graciously appointed me to that position. And I've served on it for 4 years now, but we really do not have because the zoning's so well set and well there, and the ordinance is so well written from what they did, we updated a little bit and occasionally have 1 or 2 small zoning requests or things that come through, but have not really had anything major with it.
Pat, there's so many other associations and professional groups and so many other questions I want to ask you. We only have about 2 minutes. I was trying to think through it, if there are any accomplishments for you over the last 18 years that you've been in practice back here in Marion. Anything that sticks out in your mind do you felt particularly proud about?
I don't know whether you really consider it an accomplishment. It's hard to say. I've done lots of things. I've been appointed, like I said, to a lot of committees. And I was proud to be state legal counsel for the JCs when I did that. But I think the accomplishment, at least personal somewhat and professional, is my father passed away 4 years ago. And I took over his business, of course. And like I said, being the female, I come and I've been accepted under my father, but I wasn't sure what would happen when it was my own practice. And he had had these clients since the mid-50s, a lot of them his age, a lot of them older, even though I had a few of my own friends becoming clients. It was an accomplishment to me to see that my practice has stayed on, has flourished. I've been able to maintain it and to feel the respect that comes to me also.
Absolutely, Pat. You should feel proud about that. It is tough to know, and I'm excited that it's turned out that way. Very definitely. That's a great testament, both to great upbringing as well as the ability to maintain what you learned at an early age. Who do you think, Pat, has been your greatest inspiration?
Well, again, going to that would be my father. I mean, my mother, of course, gave me a lot of my morals and values, and there's been plenty of professors and people along the way and different things, but I think coming back here and really towards what I've developed in as a person and business-wise, my father has given me the values, showed me how to have respect and get it. But he also taught me, and being in a small town and compared to my life with my brother sometimes, is he showed me what is important, that work is not the most important thing, but your family, your community, your own self is, and you can work all you want, but you've got to take time out there to do other things.
Absolutely. Work is not everything, the words of Charlie Speth. A special man and a special wife, Betty, special children, Ted, and of course Patricia here. And to think about 18 years ago getting back here to make a commitment to this community, and the community's made the commitment to her. Pat, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Greg. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank Pat Speth for giving us a glimpse of growing up in Marion County and coming back to serve Marion County. And stay tuned next week as we visit with 5 amazing Carolinians.